Thank you, John. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thumbs up, people,
Excellent.
if you hear Colin. Thumbs up. Yeah,
Great. Well,
that's great.
thank you very much for the invitation to speak. And yeah, this is not what I normally speak on, so it's a little bit weird for me to speak about something which, to my mind, was quite a long time ago. But of course, everything is now very much in the eye of the storm, as it were, the television. It's all going on, and it's created quite a positive reaction, I think, generally speaking. But we can talk about that and what it actually is. There was a lot of anxiety from my perspective. Unfortunately, I no longer look after guinea pigs because the guinea pig was killed by a weasel 2 weeks ago, which was a bit of a moment, coming home to find a dead guinea pig. So yes, that's, I'm afraid, not where we are. But yeah, the joy of looking after animals. It's easier than looking after patients, I have to say. But there we go. That's another matter. So I've got a few slides, John. Could I share some slides? Is there a way of doing that? You have the master control.
I've just allowed it. So.
Okay, great. So I will show you some stuff. Not a lot of slides, but some of this has come from the Trust Communications team, and you can see what statistics they keep on us. Because I was very surprised to find that my popularity is assessed. Can you see that?
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So you'll recognize this individual, some of you, who is my colleague and clinical director, Mr. Jeremy French, who takes a starring role in, I think it's episodes 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Gets very upset about his parking space, but we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. Anyway, so all these individuals you'll probably recognize if you've watched the program. And Geordie Hospital. So what I'm going to talk about, of course, Channel 4, for those of you who don't know, but I'm sure most of you do know, is how it came to be, what the brief was, what we actually did in the filming. And I'm just going to talk about that because obviously I haven't got a lot of the film to share with you. The interview, what that was all about, the editing, how that worked and what we did and we didn't do, and then what's happened since. And I think some of it I found quite interesting, and some of the reactions of people has been really interesting, and wasn't quite what I was expecting. So about 18 months ago now, it was December 2020, when we were in the middle of the pandemic, I was approached by the communications team here in Freeman saying, would I be willing to be filmed for a series of programs for Channel 4 about the Freeman Hospital and what we did, and actually the RBI, so Newcastle upon Tyne Hospitals Trust. And the brief was around transformational surgery. So the idea being that over the course of one day, a patient would come in, would have an operation or a procedure, their life would be changed in a positive way, and then at the end of the shift, the surgeon or the people involved with that patient would go home, and it would be 12 hours or a shift each episode, and there'd be a number of stories per episode. So I said, well, what kind of thing would you want me to do or be involved in? And they said, well, it have to be something predictable, not related to COVID. And what they wanted to talk about was a live donor kidney transplant, because of course that is very predictable. We plan those weeks, months in advance, and we know exactly who is going to have the operation on that day. And we can, to a certain extent, control the process and make sure that the patients all understand what is going on and why it's happening. But we can also put it in context. There can be some interviews before and afterwards. So unfortunately, liver transplant, which of course in Newcastle we rely almost exclusively on deceased donors, which is unpredictable, liver transplant was not on the cards at that particular time. But could it happen in the future? Could we be talking about a liver transplant or liver surgery? Then absolutely, I think potentially that may well happen. Anyway, we'll come to that. So that was the brief. And I said, well, why have you asked me in particular? And there was a lot of, oh, well, of course, we think that you're wonderful, blah, 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 blah. But actually, within the course of that moment, it became clear that, as someone said, we think you're the least weird of all the surgeons, which wasn't a ringing endorsement, I have to say. But I suppose, everything's relative. So I take compliment where it is, even if it's a pretty guarded compliment like that one. So I said, yeah, no, absolutely, I'd be happy to do it. And then they said, oh, well, we want to come to your house and we want to film you waking up, having breakfast, and then going to work. Oh, okay, well, fair enough. I suppose we could do that. And then coming home in the evening. Right, okay. So I went back to the wife and family and said, this is what they want to do. Is that okay? And my wife, Sarah, was not exactly over the moon about the whole thing. And but she said, yeah, fine, they can come and film it, but I'm not going on the television. Now, my daughter, Ella, as you may have seen, she was very keen. She's very dramatic. She likes doing this kind of thing. So she was very much on board. And my son, Tom, said, absolutely not doing that. So hence you see Ella and the chickens on the film, but you don't see my wife or my son. So I thought I'd put that in context. So the filming, of course, a lot of hours of footage was shot to create, in effect, was a few minutes of screen time. And that's pretty common, I think, to all aspects of television and movie shoots, that you take a lot of film, or in this case, a lot of USB sticks and digital media, and you only use a small fraction of what you take. But everybody had to be consented to having their face and voice on the television. So there was a lot of producers running around, both in the hospital, but particularly in the operating theatre, trying to get consent from everybody, which was a little bit obstructive. And then on the day that we were doing the transplant, I had to park 6 times, which was an interesting moment. Going in, yeah, could you do it again? We need to take another shot. So you then go round again, park the car again. So what? At some point, I actually have to go and do this transplant. So eventually, we got to the ward, and then it went pretty much as it was described on screen. They cut a lot of moments out. There was a bit of light drama added in about some of the moments with the artery, and some of that was for the television rather than maybe a real thing. I don't think they brought across the fact that there was obviously a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C for the surgery, as we discussed, and saying, if this hadn't worked, we were going to do this and we were going to do that. And I don't think that really came across, but actually it was a pretty fair representation. It was a difficult kidney transplant in reality, and most of them are relatively straightforward. So there was an element of jeopardy, but it wasn't as severe potentially as it came across. But this is a light entertainment, a drama program with a serious underlying message. And one of the key things that I wanted to get across was that this was about promoting live organ donation and transplantation, and what it could mean for an individual to receive an organ from a friend or a loved one, and how that would be the transformational way. And that was the key aspect. And I think they did that quite well, actually, and they really set the scene. And Kimberly and Deborah, sister, it was I thought they did that really well. It was a very moving moment to me. Anyway, but everybody will have their own perception on that. And then we moved, so that's the filming. And then, of course, after the day itself, they wanted this interview, and they'd set up the hospital chapel as a recording studio, which was slightly bizarre, going to the hospital chapel and being interviewed by the producer and the director with these questions. And the questions, as you may have guessed, were quite detailed, quite intimate to an uncomfortable level, let's put it that way. But a lot about background, where have I come from, what have I done, how have I ended up here, what does this all mean, why do you do what you do, what do you find interesting, exciting, what don't you like, all of those kind of questions. And then there was a lot of editing, and it's interesting, the editing of the interview, because there's certain aspects of that I do not remember. I do remember some bits, and then they put things together. So there's this bit where I talk about my heritage and that my grandfather was a Geordie and worked down the mine, but it came across as it was my father. They managed to get rid of the grand bit there. Anyway, so I don't know exactly what happened, but there was obviously a narrative they're trying to develop around the Geordie Hospital. At that time, it wasn't going to be called Geordie Hospital. There was no working title for what the series would actually be called. Geordie Hospital came later. So maybe that's how it all got kind of shoved together in that particular moment. So the editing, we had no editorial control as individuals involved, as surgeons, as healthcare personnel. None of us, as far as I'm aware, was allowed to change. We weren't allowed to see it beforehand. They did say in a rash moment at the beginning, don't worry, you'll get to see the film before it goes out and give comments. But they drew back on that towards the end. And actually, although I asked 2 or 3 times, I'd like to see the film before it goes out, I was told that that was not really what was going to happen. Sorry, we're not able to do that. I'm absolutely certain they could have done that if they wanted to, but what they didn't want was us changing what they had created. And I don't think they thought that that would be a good idea, because as you've seen in the films, there was a lot of people involved in each episode, and I thought they just couldn't deal with all of the issues. So from my understanding, there was an individual within the trust who did have editorial control and checked it over. And I got a phone call saying, Colin, I know you were keen to see the film. You'll just have to trust us that we've seen it. It looks okay. You come across all right. Don't worry. Because, of course, as a professional surgeon who's registered with the GMC and who has a reputation of some description to try and look after, I didn't want something that would potentially be misinterpreted to be broadcast. Of course, a lot of this is very sensitive stuff, and if it's taken out of context, it can seem inappropriate, callous, uncaring, all of the kind of things that you don't want as a surgeon to be thought of. So there was that anxiety for me as an individual involved in this process, thinking, how is this going to look? What is it going to look like? Am I going to be a fool? Am I going to be look at a total idiot, or how's it going to look? So there was quite a bit of anxiety, I have to say, before it went out. So it was broadcast, but of course, as soon as it was broadcast, all 6 episodes became available on Channel 4, all 4, the the streaming service that Channel 4 have online. And so I could see it in context, and I could see it alongside. And of course, we could start getting feedback. So I'm going to talk about the legacy after we talk about the feedback, because this is the one thing I've got slides on. And of course, we don't live in a television age, we live in an internet age, and we live in a social media age. And it's not so much about what the television shows, but it's the feedback. Now, I have no particular online presence. Some of my colleagues are very careful about their online presence. They manage their Twitter feed, their Instagram account, their Facebook pages, all of this kind of stuff. And I purposefully do not have any of that. So I have no Facebook, I have no Twitter, I have no Instagram, nothing like that. So I didn't know anything about that. And in the lead up to this talk, I emailed the comms team and said, do you have any feedback that I could share with Liver North and with the patients about how other people have seen the Geordie Hospital programme and what they felt about it? And they were all too keen to share something. So I've got some pictures here. Now, I can't put this in context. I purposely just wanted the statistics about the stuff in episode 1 and what I was involved in, because I don't want to start comparing how I did compared to other people, because I'm not that vain. So this is the Instagram account, Newcastle upon Tyne Hospitals Trust, about the Freeman and about the Instagram. And you'll see here, I can't see it here, but actually, I did quite well, I think, on this particular one. Next up from episode 1 of our Geordie Hospital cast as consultant transplant surgeon, and yeah, these look pretty good. These are the kind of things that I could potentially use in my professional appraisal. So I think that's relatively good. Facebook, I got 20,130 people reached, 782 reactions, 489 like, 129 love. But down here, of course, there's always someone who thinks you're a complete. Anyway, so there are people who didn't like it, which is what everybody's allowed to do. So that was interesting. Of course, episode 1, and I was going to mention some of this. There's some really heartwarming stories. There's some great people that we know work and live in the Northeast, and I think that really came across, that warmth, and certainly. Just in these numbers, I mean, it's huge numbers, really. 61,000 people reached, 3,580 reactions. Sorry, let's go back to that. I haven't really looked at this in detail, but as you can see here, and a lot of these numbers, I have to say, as a social media naive person, don't really mean very much to you, but to me. But for those of you who have Facebook accounts, this might mean a bit more. But I thought I'd share it with you as an interesting aside to the whole program. Twitter. So I have tweeted in the past via Northeast Surgical Academy, NESTAC, which is a different thing. But I don't get these kind of metrics. It was interesting. Next up from episode 1 of Geordie Hospital cast as consultant transplant performs a live kitting. Sounds very dramatic. And we got 9,598 impressions. I'm not entirely sure what that means. Total engagements 98, and then all of these different things. But that might mean something to you guys who are media savvy. Then there was another tweet that was sent about the Weetabix. Oh God, the Weetabix. Yes, I've had so many comments as you walk down the hospital. The porters shout across, "You got shares in Weetabix, League?" And no, I don't have shares in Weetabix. I wish I had shares in Weetabix. Maybe I should ask for some kind of kickback from them. So I had some pretty good publicity from that one. And that obviously made an impression. Total engagements 412. And then there's the one about getting the operation right. And this seemed to hit a lot more people. Naeem Sumri, this one seemed to be, maybe that was because it was the third and people had kind of cottoned onto it by then, but that seemed to hit a lot more. And then this was interesting, I thought, which was this is from one of the critics in one of the television magazines. Geordie Hospital is the NHS, I think they've got an extra, is there, reaching out and giving you a warm hug. And I think, so I talked at the beginning about legacy and feedback, and it's actually, I do think people have had a really warm feeling from this series. And it's certainly been a very positive series. There wasn't much of a negativity. Everything was very positive. And so I think in that respect, it was something that in retrospect, I'm glad I did. And my anxiety went quite quickly when I realized that they were going to portray the hospital patients, the professionals, in a very positive light. So I think it was excellent from that regard. So the other thing I was going to share with you, and obviously John knows all about this because he was quoting from it. For those of you who want more about the Geordie Hospital, that was the page they told me. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, a lot of people looked at it. But what was quite nice actually is that it hasn't. People have just got on with their lives, and it's moved into the background, which is, in some ways, I'm quite glad. But the web page, which I was going to share with you, which John knows about, which is quite interesting, and it talks in the right amount of detail, I would think, for, here it is, sorry, is this account. So it's Newcastle Hospitals, it's curated within the trust, and they've looked at it, and we all had to provide a little spiel, a bio, and a picture. This is from the hospital chapel, this picture of Emma. And if you remember, Emma did a great piece about the poor little chap who was on a ventricular assist device.
We can't see it. We can't see it, Colin.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't pressed the right button. Let me press the right button. Share. Sorry. No, I've shared. Have I shared the wrong thing?
Well, this is a Liver North, yeah.
Oh, you've got the Liver North. You've got the Liver North general meeting there, have you?
Yes.
Is that it?
Well, it's gone now. No, it's gone now. It flashed up for a split second.
Oh. How can I deal with it? Let's try again. Because I was going to talk you through some of the individuals, but maybe because I haven't got much more to say, to be honest. Anyway,
well, that's absolutely fine.
The website is there, and there's a lovely little description of
which website are you talking about? The Newcastle Hospital's website.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So if you click on, hopefully you can see me back again now.
Yes.
Okay, so if you click on Newcastle Hospitals Trust and type in Geordie Hospital, Newcastle, and it gives you a breakdown on who was in each episode, what they do, what they talked about, and how it went. And I thought the little chap who ended up having his heart transplant was obviously a really good story with a lovely ending. So the legacy, which is the one thing I was going to say about, was it's interesting. And of course, I was expecting the jibes. I was expecting lots of when I saw on the advert that was chat about Cassandra the kidney, I thought, oh, that's it. I'm doomed. I'm going to be called
Cassandra.
Cassandra from here on in.
I don't know
course,
I don't know why you picked that name.
Well, exactly. It was just spontaneous. There wasn't any thought that went into it, but there's been a lot of, oh, here's Cassandra, here he comes, which was all to be expected. So I kind of expected a lot of that. But it's interesting now that when I send emails to people, I think they answer a little bit quicker. It's actually opened a few doors for me.
That's good. Okay.
And it's helped in some regards in getting some funding, I think, for some research. So, which was interesting. And I hope there's been contact from the Daily Mirror, and we did a piece on live donation for the Daily Mirror. And there's been other trusts, other media interested in talking about transplantation. So from that respect, it fulfilled what I was hoping, that we would increase the profile of transplantation and the potential for organ donation. And it's light entertainment, but also that warm hug from the NHS to the UK. When we all need a little bit of a pick-me-up, actually, I think it's really done that. I'm very proud to have been part of the programme, the series. We got a lovely little box from Dame Jackie, which had this sticker on the top. I've taken it home. Had a sticker on the top with a which got a reel of film, and they put on it, Dr. Colin Wilson, episode 1, series 1, Geordie Hospital, thank you. And with a popcorn and a can of pop and things inside it. The idea being that you would sit watching yourself with this box. She certainly knows how to talk to the masses, Dame Jackie, I have to say that. So that was an interesting moment as well. So there's been lots of little things like that afterwards, and I certainly look back on it as a positive experience. I'd be interested in hearing any reflections. Interestingly, I think over 1 million people watched each episode live nationally, which is very unusual in this day and age with live streaming. I'm sure there will be further episodes. I'm sure there'll be more of Geordie Hospital in years to come. And of course, it'll look at different aspects. They're not going to do the same thing again. And I hope that we can get Liver North and liver patients involved and up the profile. I'm sure that's what will happen next.
Jolly good.
That's all I had to say. So thank you
Brilliant.
very much.
Well, first of all, what I'm going to do now is ask. Yeah, well done, Colin. Thank you. What I'm going to do now
at this stage, isn't it?
Your check's in the post. Now, everyone's muted, but if you have a question, you can either put your hand up using the system, or you can put your hand up like that, so that we're not all asking questions at once. So any questions for Colin, please?
Matt D sent a lovely little chat there about that's the link to see
Oh, that's
the
the link. That's good. So if you're
website.
in the chat,
Yep.
folks, you can click on that one and get it. There's Matt there with his headphones. Thanks, Matt.
Hello.
That's a good tip. So anyone got any questions for Colin? Because I've got a couple.
Oh, here we go.
Well, I'll start it off if you like. I thought no editorial control when you first said that. I thought that's frightening. And then
Yeah,
I
it was.
remembered when I was a governor at Newcastle, they got the press department of the Freeman and RVI was really high powered, and they actually combined with the university, and they employ ex-professional media people. And one of the people who worked there was Helen Ray, who was she worked on the Evening Chronicle, and then there's a lady who used to work at BBC Newcastle, now works at the Pink Palace. She now works at the university. So I think you're in good hands because they've got the best interest at heart.
Exactly, and that was what I had to kind of keep thinking about, was the fact that the hospital doesn't want to look bad, and they're not going to let me come across as a criminal or an uncaring professional. So you kind of have to trust people, obviously. But I have a very old friend. Well, she's not very old. She's my age, but I've known her for many years, and she is a media lawyer based in London and interacts with all these things. And when she heard that I had no editorial control, she said, "You're mad. I mean, you're absolutely mad. They will take you to the cleaners." I thought, oh, great. That's just what I didn't want to hear, Karen. Thank you for that. So that caused me a few sleepless nights. But I suppose the one thing I was comforted by was I did have this kind of nuclear option, which is you can always say, I withdraw my consent.
Yeah.
So, and if I'd heard anything from the Trust Communications team saying, actually, you know what, there's one issue, we're not quite, well, that's it. I'm pressing the button. I withdraw my consent. You're not allowed to put that out. So I did have that kind of option in the bank, but I didn't really want to use it for obvious reasons. You don't want to jeopardize when everybody's put so much work into it.
Yeah, well, I thought it was brilliant. And a lot of people said it was brilliant. They may not have clicked on LinkedIn or, but they still thought it was brilliant. The other thing I was going to ask you was you had some anxieties, and they've been, settled really. You no longer have. Would you do anything different?
Yes, I would definitely do. Well,
you'd have two Weetabix instead of three.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd be very careful about what I said. Thankfully, they didn't put in some of my more on the edge comments, shall we say that. So one of the things that had happened was and this caused me significant anxiety, was the kidney. So when you implant a live donor kidney, one of the great joys is that it produces urine straight away. It starts peeing.
Yeah.
Which you don't often get with deceased donors because it's been through quite a lot, obviously, the kidney, whereas with from a live donor, it's been warm and healthy, and then suddenly it's moved across, and it should pass urine straight away. But for whatever reason, this one didn't initially, and there was just a few dribbles of urine.
Oh, right.
And I was talking to Rodrigo, the assistant across the way, and I was kind of caught in the moment, and I wasn't thinking about the camera crew there. I said to Rodrigo, "It's just dribbling. Why won't it spurt? I want it to spurt." I can't think of anything in life where dribbling is better than spurting. and Rodrigo just said to me, "You know that you just said that on camera." And so that was. So that I was thinking, oh crikey! I hope they don't put that out in prime time television. People will think he's a pervert. But I would probably be more careful with what I said. But thankfully, it was a warm, caring program. So
yeah. I think that's right, and I think the warm hug sentence is brilliant, and we'd like to send you a warm hug for doing it from Liver North. That was really, really good, and you came across as a really caring, compassionate surgeon, and we enjoyed that immensely, and so did Jeremy. He was great, and the two of you, and they're good. You're both good friends of Liver North, so that's excellent.
Yeah. And very humbling. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So has anyone else got anything, or have I asked all the questions? Oh, here's a hand.
Oh, here we
Right,
go.
Yvonne, unmute. There you go.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, and thanks for that little bit of inside knowledge. It was really quite interesting. But I think the stars, I'll be honest with you, I mean, obviously, you know, we know who our stars are in Liver North, but the stars of the show for me were the patients. It was very moving and very heartwarming stories, unbelievable, all of them. All of them. In fact, all of the characters, whether they be staff or patients, but the patients, particularly, I think they were chosen really quite well. I don't know whether they were chosen in particular. I don't know about that, Colin.
Yes, I mean, obviously, there was a lot of thought that went into the patients in that we didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable, and that was the prime motivator. But of course, there were aspects to the story that were emphasized. And so, for instance, with Kimberly, she's had a really hard life with her diabetes, some really tough moments. And there's been some lifestyle choices that she's made along the way which haven't helped. But of course, we didn't go into that for obvious reasons. That wasn't helpful. So it was really interesting from my perspective, because of course everything is about where you stand and where you look and how you look at these things. But she's had a really hard time, and I think that came across, and the fact that her sister was so caring came across, and that she was willing to put herself through major surgery to help her sister was great. And they really focused on the important aspects. And if you'd been uncaring, and if you'd been potentially a little bit more critical, then other elements of the story could have been discussed and highlighted. So I'm very grateful to the production company, Curve Media, about going big on the things that we should have gone big on. So there was a lot of effort that went into choosing the patients, and there was some patients who said no, and there's some patients where we said, well, it's difficult to make this story available to the public. It's difficult to make this something that people can relate to, whereas everybody can relate to a mum with a child and a sister and everything, and the family aspects, and that's, you know, I think they did a really good job there. So thank you for your comments. And you're right, I mean, when I say very humbling, I was very humbled by the patients and the stuff that they go through every day. And of course, we just see it for a few days, or maybe even one day, and we say, oh, we've done our bit, and then walk off and everything's fine for us. But they have to live with the surgery, they have to live with their problems, they have to live with their underlying conditions. And they do it in such a stoical way. I mean, they just get on with life. And that's what really came across to me, was the way, particularly in the Northeast, the Geordies just get on with it and really emphasize the positive.
It was the relationship well done in terms of the relationship in particular with the patient and the doctors. Some of the doctors
sorry, Yvonne, you'll have to say all that again, because I think it all got mixed up.
All right, sorry, no, it was the relationship in particular between the doctors and the patients that really came across really quite powerful, because all of the doctors that were on there, and I'm saying doctors in particular because it was noticeable that the relationship, and at the moment we're all suffering a little bit from that drop in relationship between patients and things like that. But the doctors, all of the doctors were prepared to go that way.
Yeah, you keep dropping out, but I think we got the gist of it, where you're saying that the doctors really put themselves out and the relationship between the patient and the doctors was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we were the least weird.
We were the least what?
Weird.
We were the least weird.
Yes,
definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Great stuff. So is that all right, Yvonne? I've got Sean now. If you'd like to unmute, Sean. There you go.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting, Colin, to hear all of the backgrounds, you know. Hi. I said to the family before we watched the programme with you in, that you were always a safe pair of hands. There were many emergencies, as you know, when you looked after my family member. And that is how you came across in that theatre, that you had plans to deal with the situation and you dealt with it. And I'd seen it so many times. And as John
Yeah, I was
said-
just saying to myself that every time I can only remember, you know, of course I remember Liam very well, and I remember the whole thing very, and it left a very big impression on me. And yeah, I mean, these things are, you know, we all take these experiences with us, and they create who we are, and as it's all part of the rich tapestry of life, as they say. And it is really difficult at times, sorry, just to mention this, to try and deal with that when you meet a new family and a new and try and start from scratch, because you always take those scars and those good moments with you to the next patient as well. And that's one of the troubles that we deal with, and it's a difficult thing to do. And meeting Kimberly, of course, when I met her for the first time, I'm thinking about all the other diabetics that I've met along the way who are having kidney transplants, and some of it's gone well and some of it hasn't gone well. And you have to put it all to one side to a certain extent and try and deal with each situation. But for the patients, of course, they're doing exactly the same thing the other way. They're meeting you as a doctor, but they've met so many doctors along the way to get to that particular point, and they've had good moments with doctors and they've had bad moments with doctors. And so it's the same for everybody. You try and start from a good moment, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. And of course it can end badly, and it can end in a really difficult way. But thankfully, of course, in George Hospital, it always, so my colleagues were texting me, through series 1, episode 1, going, oh, this is looking a bit of a problem, Colin. How are you going to deal with this, eh? I said, well, spoiler alert, it ends okay. Because, of course, they're not going to put out a bad story. So in some ways, that's the unrealistic thing, because, of course, we know that often these things don't end well. But that's the warm hug.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. And you did come over very well.
Yeah, I did. Are you okay with that then, Sean?
Yes.
Okay, Marion, we've got you now if you want to unmute. That's it.
Hello there. I just wanted to find out if your wife and son regret not taking part, and is your daughter internet famous now?
I think the chickens are more famous than she is, but no. So Tom and Sarah are very happy that they didn't take part. They can laugh at us, and right, yeah, no, that. I mean, thankfully, vanity is not one of the things we're afflicted with as a family, so it's not something that really bothers us. And there's been some. Yeah, I mean, I didn't take part to have my family all over the internet or all over the television. That was not why I did it anyway. But yeah, no is the answer to your question. Sorry.
Good. Okay. Are that okay, Marion? Oh, there's Michael. Would you like to unmute, Michael?
Oh, hello, Colin. Yeah, no, I think I'd echo most of the views that everybody else has said. You know, certainly the stars of the show were the patients and those really skilled surgeons. So there was the moment of the female surgeon. I don't recall her name. The lady who removed the tumor from behind the guy's eye was just incredible to watch. But there were bits. Yeah, amazing. What was her name again? Lucy
Clark.
Fantastic, really cool as a cucumber. She could certainly, if I had a similar problem, I would certainly trust her. She was brilliant.
We've got Jane now.
Hello. I just wanted to say how great it was, because I don't usually like watching things like that. And I've recently joined the transplant list, and I thought I had to watch it. And it made me feel a lot better having watched it, knowing that, you got a bit more of an insight of what happens, which you don't see in anything else.
I see. Thank you, Jane. I was going to say, this is one thing I forgot to say, which I was going to say to people, was I think that was the legacy. So I put up that thing at the beginning about the legacy. And I think one of the great legacies for patients was that it would make them feel a bit more relaxed about the whole process of coming to hospital. And so not for past patients, but for future patients to think, well, I saw the Geordie Hospital. This is what the hospital looks like. This is what the nurses look like. This is what the doctors look like. And I thought that was a really positive thing. It was a great publicity for the trust, and to put patients at their ease, I thought was a really nice legacy of the whole thing, that people would be more relaxed about coming to hospital. So I thought, so thank you. Yes, and I'm glad that you felt the same way.
Yeah, and other people I've spoken to, it like the way it's all been put together and the way it portrays you all as real people, as well as like amazing professionals doing what you do. You're all real people as well, which I think puts it in perspective for people who are going to be coming in at some point, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And of course, it's the thing that is impossible to do on a day-to-day basis, which is to behave like we are in a television program every day, and that everything's warm and fuzzy, and that everything will be all right at the end, because of course sometimes it's not all right for patients. But it's nice to start on a positive note with the patient, where they think that, wait a minute, I've seen these guys, they're trying to do the best for me, and I'm going to have my own experience, whatever it is, but at least we're starting from a positive standpoint. Whereas all too often you can start from a negative standpoint. Oh, the GPs really muck me around, I'm coming to hospital, they're going to muck me around. So yeah, I thought that was really, that legacy was a great aspect to the series.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, now the other part of the talk, sorry to lump you with this, Colin. You did say you would talk about some transplantation matters, organ matters, yeah. But don't worry, don't worry about it. It'll not take you long, because we've had a letter today from NHS Blood and Transplant about the COVID, the effect of COVID on organs. And
right.
Do you know the letter I'm talking about? The people who've had COVID wouldn't be allowed to be donors.
I haven't seen this letter,
okay,
but
okay.
Maybe, has it just arrived today, is it?
Yeah, Derek sent it out as the new director.
Media alert. Okay, here we go. So I've got something from Lisa, World.
Yeah.
Where issues release. We're expecting widespread. I haven't. Right. Letter to colleagues. Updated version. Wait a minute. Let me have a look.
Yeah, that's ODT. That's the letter. Yeah.
Can you see this? Is this the one?
I haven't got it on screen. You haven't shared it. Well, it's. But anyway, I thought you might be able to give us in layman's terms what it means. And I picked up that it meant they were making more donors available. They were allowed. They've done some donations from people who had COVID with no ill effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So of course, some people have COVID and are completely asymptomatic, and it's not an invasive disease. It's just that it's sat in their nose and throat, and there's no COVID in the organs, as it were. So those people, we think it's safe to take the liver if they die and then transplant it. Of course, there's other people where the virus is everywhere in their body, and that wouldn't be safe to give to someone along with the drugs that we have to give to stop rejection.
Right. Yeah.
So we're not talking about using patients who are in hospital with what I would call invasive COVID disease. We're talking about carriers potentially of the disease, where the liver and kidneys aren't affected, for instance. So there have been a number of cases successfully where these organs have been transplanted, and people have done well. Of course, each situation is unique. Each situation, there's a risk-benefit analysis. Is it worth using this combination of organs for you as a patient, or is it better to wait for another donor? And each situation we have to think about those. So in certain cases, for instance, if a patient had a big tumor in their liver and they were right on the borderline where transplant could or be successful or would be allowed, then it would be potentially worth thinking about using an organ from a donor that had carried COVID. Whereas in other cases where people were maybe less severely afflicted and could wait for another donor, then it would be wise to probably wait and not accept that risk. And we have these conversations with patients on a regular basis. And when patients go on the waiting list, most patients I see, some patients are seen by my colleagues as well, of course, and we talk about the risks and we say that we're going to always think about them as an individual. Some of the transplant centres have these tick box things that when you go on the waiting list, you say, I am willing to accept a donor after circulatory death, yes or no, tick. And that is how they run the process. The problem with that, of course, is it's one moment and time moves on, situations change. And so we don't do that tick box moment because that colours everything afterwards. And you said you weren't going to accept this, so therefore we haven't had any offers. And we tend to try and have a conversation about each particular donor recipient combination. Sorry, I've waffled on there, but
no, that's exactly right. Yeah, I know that it goes to the MDT as well. The whole team talk about it.
Exactly,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the hepatologist, the surgeon, the transplant coordinator, we all get involved in that decision. The anaesthetist as well, obviously, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So, and it is it's really difficult to make a kind of blanket ruling, a statement, a letter. And a lot of these things are quite nuanced, that there's aspects to it. But in our social media age, often it gets coloured into this is going to happen or this isn't going to happen. So I just think, we just need to be a bit wary of some of these things, proclamations.
It's not black and white, is it?
Exactly, it's not. Unlike the tune, it's shades of grey all the way. Oh God, there was that book, wasn't there? I shouldn't say that, no.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey, right. So would you stay with us?
Again. Oh,
well, thank you very much, Colin, for that. That's good. That's an insight. I knew you'd have something about the transplantation with this, the fact that so many organ donors, prospective organ donors, had COVID and possibly even died through COVID. You know, it's settling down now. My hospital.
It's been a big minefield.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's settling down a bit. My last figures from the Queen Elizabeth, where I'm a governor, there's 15 people currently in hospital and 61 staff members on the sick with COVID, or COVID related, really. You know, so it's still there, but it's decreasing. So, can I ask for everyone's indulgence? By the way, this is the Numbers Club. Joan used to work in a bank, and that's why we've still got this bag. But she didn't work at the TSB. She worked at Midland, so they stole the TSB bags. Anyway, I'm going to do this draw now. If anyone wants to join the lottery, just email us. It's the email address that's on the notification for this meeting. It's £1 a week. No sleight of hand, nothing in there. Right. Here we go. And it is number 29. And that is Rose Pinkney from Fulwell. Remember Rose Pinkney? So she's won £250. So that's lovely. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for coming. Keep your eyes on social media for the notification of our next meeting. We will be going back into the hospital for our meetings sooner or later, but God knows when. And I'd just like to say that we got a lot of feedback from Fiona, and she loved the Geordie Hospital because she lives in London, and she said it was just like watching home. So that's nice, isn't it? She must have felt it. Yeah. That's it, folks. Thank you very much for coming to the meeting tonight, and do email if you have any concerns or if you want to talk about anything. And I'll stop recording now. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, John, for organising it.
That's a pleasure. Bye.
All right, thank you very much.
Bye, folks.